This is Mark Whitten.
This is Adam MacArthur.
This is Ann Yatko.
This is Molly Chung.
Hey everybody, this is Michael Yurchak.
This is Brianna Roberts.
This is Daquan Wilshire.
This is Rico Fajardo, and you're watching.
And you're listening to Spoiler Force Podcast. Set your heart ablaze.
All right, so this is episode 142 of Spoiler Force Podcast. My name is Ricky, and thank you for tuning in. So this week's guest is someone that I reached out to thanks to Molly Zhang. She recommended him to be on the show, and I got him on. So I'm so excited to have him on the show to just talk about what he's done. He's done voice acting, ADR script writing. He's also a comedian as well. So let me just bring on my guest here, Alex Mai. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, like I said in this intro, I was able to find you through Molly Zhang. She listed quite a few people for me to reach out to since our episode, and you actually replied first out of the people I reached out to.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I was pretty surprised how quickly you did respond, because I wasn't expecting a quick turnaround like that. But before we do get into more about what you have done, for fans and followers who may not know you, how did you get started with just doing what you're doing right now? Because it seems like you do quite a bit with not just voice acting too.
Yeah, I got my fingers in a lot of pies. So basically how I got my start was so I'm from Florida, and also I'm Chinese, so I had very Chinese parents and a very Asian upbringing of like, you're gonna be a doctor, you're gonna be a lawyer, you're gonna be kind of that situation. And I kind of had landed going into college. I landed on like, I'm going to be a psychologist or psychiatrist or something. And, up to that point, I hadn't really done much performance. I actually hadn't even growing up, I wasn't allowed to watch much TV at all. And so I just didn't have much exposure in general to just stuff. And so while in college, I was going down the psychology track. And I took what I thought was a counseling and psychology class, but it was a psychology of suicide. And it was way too heavy for me. And it was one of those situations where I was just I can't do this. I don't think I could be somebody's therapist, just handle their baggage along with my own. And so I was like, well, what do I do now? I had no idea. So I started just branching out. I took as many classes in as many different things as I could, like creative writing, theater, and I kind of landed of I really enjoy acting and performance, like improv, stand up, that kind of thing, comedy. And so I kind of shifted gears and started pursuing performance. And after I graduated, I basically was like, you know what, I'm gonna go to Texas and start trying to be an actor over there. And just after taking tons of different classes, just working on it for multiple years, I kind of and like you said, you alluded to before, doing a lot of things of getting involved in time coding for ADR, getting into script writing for ADR. I even have in addition to acting, I've done directing. I've done some production work. I've done just a ton of just different things, worn a lot of different hats. And so now I'm mostly an actor and ADR script writer. So that's kind of currently what is the thing I'm doing most now.
And that's awesome, dude. I love seeing how you're able to branch out to different parts of just the for CrunchyRoll, just doing many different roles. Because I've had folks like Emmy Lowe on, who talk about just doing assistant directing, and even on the show, I've mostly spoke with voice actors, and now I'm kind of making the shift where I want to see what more people have at CrunchyRoll. Not just everyone knows the voice actors because they're always kind of the frontman, but no one really says or asks about the people in the back, how does all this stuff come together and work for people who watch it in dub or in different languages and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's really cool to see that you're able to not just do voice acting, but you're able to have another job, I guess you could say, in the studio as well. If you're not acting, then you're doing something else that'll still assist you in that, in your role or your career that you're doing now?
Hmm. Yeah, like it's there's I mean like it's good that you're talking to other people in the industry too, because like I mean, for example, like one of the cornerstones of uh the ADR process, like the whole dubbing process is time coding. I think some places call it time spotting and stuff like that, but it's basically you have a person who's going to go through the entire episode, literally every single frame, 23 frames a second, 24 minutes an episode, just and marking out anytime a character speaks or makes a noise or opens their mouth, which character it is, when do they open their mouth, when do they close it, and stuff like that. Where they're spending between like 4 to 7 hours, depending on the episode, marking exactly every single time, and like everything is kind of built off of that work. And so like time coding is one of those things where people just they're underpaid, they don't get enough recognition, so it's and they're just overworked. So it's good that you're not only looking at like the voice acting side, but also like the other aspects of the ADR process.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to like share that, because like when I learning that there was just so much more going to dubbing anime, because I said this before on my show, like I wasn't the biggest fan of English dub for a while, and it wasn't until I was speaking with voice actors or people who were in the industry that I started having this huge amount of respect for just the craft. Like it's not as easy as everyone thinks it is. It's not just going to the booth and just recording a few lines and walking out. It may seem like that, but then when you go through the production side, and even like doing this podcast stuff, like I do like post production, which is not the greatest, but I get like a little glimpse, or like just a little
You get a
taste
taste
of
of it.
yeah, just to see how much effort goes and how time consuming it really is when you're doing, like you said, like a 23-minute episode, just going frame by frame. I can only imagine like trying to write the dialogue out, or trying to make sure like the mouth flaps work, trying to make it make sense, because sometimes there are certain words that we want to use but can't because it doesn't match the frame.
Oh
So
yeah.
it's very difficult to kind of just make that adjustment. But hearing from your experience, man, I love to just kind of know a little bit more. Like what made you kind of, I guess, dip into that? Was it more of the creative writing side that you kind of wanted to do more ADR?
So like I mean, like it's one of those things where like I think at some point in that soul searching moment in college of like, what do I want to do with my life? I was like, I know what I don't want to do. I don't want to do office work. Like I don't want to have that kind of job. I want to kind of have that freelance life. And so I mean, like that was a big part of me getting into these different things, was to excuse me, to like find a way to still be connected to the industry, but also like put food on the table and pay rent,
Right.
um and like yeah, it's just kind of taking work whenever I could, just saying yes to as many things as I could. And like it just somehow just kind of works out. Like of just like, oh, I'm gonna keep doing this, and uh I might not like everything I'm doing, but I did a fine enough job that someone's like, hey, you want to do this next thing? Hey, you want to do this next thing? So like it's just, and it's a lot of just learning and just being open to being like, oh yeah, that the thing I did there, I could have done it way better this way, and then just kind of adapting. Because like with time coding, I've done a fair bit of time coding, and with writing and stuff, like the the processes for a lot of those are more like, hey, here's the video, here's the template, like here's how you would format your script, go ahead, do it. It's just like, oh, but how, like what do I use? It's like, just whatever, I use this, you can if you want, you can do whatever. Like it's a whole like a lot of trial and error and figuring it out. Like other I know there are some places that are like trying to standardize it more, which is great, because starting into it there's a lot of trial and error. But if you can standardize it, then that really helps. But still, like regardless, there's like in all aspects of the industry there's a lot of like, hey, you just figure it out, man, good luck. So
Is that more like, when it comes to programs and stuff too? Like, do they want you to just figure it out on your own, or do they have like specific programs for you to use when you're doing time coding?
So with like for example with time coding, when I remember asking, I was like, "Hey, how?" Like they're just like, "Hey, like like they told me what to do," and the concept of like, yeah, you go through and anytime you hear a voice or someone opens their mouth, you mark it. And I was like, "But how?" And the response I got was like, "I don't know, like I use QuickTime Player," and I was like, "You use QuickTime Player to like to move 1/24 or 1/23 of a second, like, and to look at stuff?" And they were like, "Yeah, that's what I do." And then so I went from using like QuickTime Player to then using what else did I do? I switched to VLC because I thought that had better timing aspects. And then now I use Adobe Premiere, which is just overkill. But Adobe Premiere gives me the ability to scroll and scrub through video like with my scroll wheel, so I can be very specific about exactly when things start and stop. It gives me a lot of controls that I can like customize my keyboard layout so that I can like quickly jump back and forth to different cues. And like that's kind of what I've landed on. I'm sure one day I'll find something better or that works better, but that's currently kind of where I'm at. And it's just that's over the course of years of just kind of trial error, doing this, switching from this to that. So
Man, that's just crazy because I'm like trying to think of just like I'm terrible at like just time like pausing times and stuff like that. Like even when I edit my own podcast, like I have to make sure like there's no excess sound when I'm recording or even hearing my voice and just like going through the motions of just like I gotta clip this out. But to hear audio and watch the anime and while trying to get like a specific time frame on there, it's just man, I can only see like especially with using QuickTime, something that's kind of older like that.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like trying to just figure that out. But how did this like I guess when you jumped into this, was it just more of like an opportunity that you took then besides just acting? Like it was just because would this be considered like another job in Crunchyroll then?
Yeah, it's so the like things are really compartmentalized where like at like on the acting side I have a relationship with Crunchyroll as an actor. But when I was like time coding, I was actually working for another company that had contracted out to, at the time, Funimation, like contracted out to them. And then as a writer, I was contracting with the writing department. Like it would just be kind of separate. Um, and so like they don't really impact each other very much in terms of just like especially because time coding and writing are very deadline based. They're very much like, hey, this is due Wednesday morning. I don't care how or when you do it. It's just got to be done by then. And then like with like acting and stuff, it's very much like, well, there needs to be an engineer. There needs to be a director. So like we're scheduling a specific time from this time to this time to be working.
Going into this do you write your own, like, do you write the scripts as well for when you're doing like the dub and for like
So
ADR?
so generally like the actors just they just go into act, but like I also write. So like last season I wrote Raven of the Inner Palace and Golden Kamuy. Like so I was writing those scripts. And like any work that I did on those shows, like I did some bits for Raven of the Inner Palace. That was just kind of a separate voice acting kind of thing than the writing.
Do you write for the whole season or do they have you just on specific episodes?
So as when you're contracting for them, you will sometimes be given a whole season. Sometimes you'll just be given like to pick up here and there, or you'll just because like with the writers, the full-time writers are given a full season, but then if they have time off or they like get sick or something, or a holiday happens, that work then gets kind of given to the contractors to just pick up an episode or two. So
And that's what you've been kind of doing as well then?
So I've been doing that for a while, but then I started working full time last September. So
Okay. Yeah, then that's really cool then to be able to work on a whole script like for like a whole season. And I'm sure there's more than just like you said there was a team, so there's more than one person just like working on this script. Are you guys like all brainstorming together then, or is this like you guys kind of have your own like figure one section out, you know?
Oh, well, no, each person like works on one script. So for example, I worked on like the Raven of the Inner Palace scripts and the Golden Kamuy scripts. And the only time anyone else worked on anything is when I was unavailable or out and they just wrote the script. Uh, like we're not really sharing scripts with like each other because like
Oh, okay.
I think that would be a little chaotic.
Do you find that pretty difficult then when you're like I guess translating it to make it fit more, or you know like how does that process work?
So yeah, it's we actually don't translate. Like I don't speak Japanese, but I'm given a translation
Right.
and as well as the video, and I basically have to uh take the what's being said, like the spirit of what's being said, kind of what from a story perspective is trying to be like, you know, what's trying to be accomplished in that scene, what is the character trying to say, and also finding the character's voice and then fitting that to flaps. um and that's the main process of the ADR script writing thing. And it can be really challenging sometimes. Like uh sometimes they use a lot of words to say very little, or
Yeah.
use very little words to say a lot, and you have to try to figure out how to get the same information, like the same core information, the same feel, the same intention across in a kind of a different language, while also making it like not super clunky or like sound like it's uh like clearly a translation.
Yeah, so that's what I was trying to get to. Like, you know, just because I know that with different languages, especially like when you hear it in Japanese and then try to switch it to English, there's different contexts and like different words that we use versus what the Japanese use, and then sometimes it kind of like crosses over and it doesn't make sense, you know. So to break those things down, you know, how was that difficult for you when you first started versus now?
Yeah, so like it's definitely something that like it's like a learning process, right? Where um the first couple times I run into a situation where it's just like how the hell do I make this work? Um and then like I'll bash my head against it for like, an hour just trying to make something work. And then it fits, and then I go, okay, so this is how I kind of arrive to this place. And like you end up picking up ways of just like, cuz normally like when you learn to write, you're not restricted by flaps so heavily like that. It's such a different technical process to have to match to flaps that it there definitely is a learning curve. But as you get more comfortable with it, as you understand like kind of the flow of like, yeah, this is how Japanese works and this is how it is, then it works. Like, it becomes easier, and it's something that like I like to look at it like it's like a little puzzle. Like
Yeah.
like I keep working the word puzzle, and then when I get it right, I'm like, oh, that felt pretty good. I got it. Um, but yeah, I mean, like, and the thing, like, because you mentioned earlier that like, uh, you were mostly like previously you were a sub watcher, not really a dub watcher, and I like, I think I'm not going to yuck anyone's yum. If people prefer what they prefer, and that's great. But I will tell you, as someone who's had to work for years now, staring at mouth flaps and listening to Japanese audio, you just watch for a little bit, like without don't look at the subtitles, but like just look at mouths, and you're gonna see that they start flapping way early or way late, and like they don't care about flaps at all. And it's funny to sometimes see people talk about like, oh well, I watch subs because the Japanese care much more. And it's like, we care more about flaps than anybody else in the world. We will agonize over matching flaps, and we'll bend over backwards to make it work. And it's kind of a funny thing that just to read sometimes and being like, man, you guys are too busy reading the subtitles. Look at the mouths.
Right. That's the thing where like I have so much respect for. It's the effort to make it look like the words are coming out of their mouths versus just cramming everything. Because like,
Mhm.
you know, there's one series I watched, Konosuba, right?
Mhm.
And I watched that both in sub and dub, but then there's like a certain scene in that show where they play rock paper scissors, and the main character Kazuma kind of goes off on one of his teammates, and in Japanese he's like spewing a lot of words out, and clearly you can tell that the mouth flaps don't match with what he's saying. And then when
Mhm.
you go to dub, like you said, it kind of just like it's still not too precise, but like they still make it try to fit versus like just spewing out like a one long like run on sentence with the
Yeah.
character. So for you, like, now that you've had experience with acting and ADR, when you transition these, like, I guess, the learning experiences to acting, do you find it a little bit easier then, or do you still kind of just rely on the person that's doing the script writing, or like just the director and all that?
I mean, like, so it definitely helps because, like, um, I mean, like, for whenever I write a script, I'll spend like 20 hours writing the script, and that's 20 hours of me nonstop thinking about timing. So then when I'm in the booth, I'm just like, yeah, this is just timing. It's fine. So it's like it's a transferable skill. It's not directly one to one, but it's in the ballpark. So it does help a lot. Um, and I mean, like, there are times that, like, you know, my experience as a writer helps in the booth on separate things. For example, like, if we're in the booth and something doesn't quite fit right, or it's like, oh, it looks like this is a little short, we got to fill it. There have been times where I'm just like, how about this? And then, like, just as if I were to be the one, I look at it as if I'm the one writing it. It's like, well, then if I need to fill this, then we can add maybe this, and like, and so, it's come in handy, uh, more than once. So,
Yeah, because usually like that's something I was very curious to, because when I spoke with Lucy Christian about that, being able to like kind of throw out ideas at when you're being an actor versus, and then trying to recite the lines. Like, I've asked her, has she ever like made, I guess, somewhat small changes to a script or anything like that? And what I've been told is like usually you just kind of go off of what you're given, and then
mhm.
sometimes you like you'll play by ear and adjust to it. But since you have that writing background, and it kind of seems like it makes it a little bit easier for you, like when you do read a certain script, or not to change someone else's writing, but to kind of just like adapt it. So I guess when you're doing all of this, like, from all your jobs that that you're currently doing, all that experience just pays off pretty much when you're doing the acting side of it.
Yeah, it can definitely help. It it's one of those things where, like I said, it's like a related muscle kind of thing where it helps a lot. It can help build, but, like, uh, it's also like, the what it's not entirely, it's like supplemental, right? It helps
Right.
a little bit, but, like, still, like, when you're in the booth as an actor, like, that acting is going to be kind of the thing that carries you through. And this is just a little bonus if we go, huh, this doesn't fit. How do we do this? And I just go, oh man, how about this? Or like, if we sometimes when, in recording, you're doing the preview and the J, and it's just like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, holy moly, like, visually this is crazy, and the time code isn't helping. What's going on? And just being like, oh, it looks like the time code is late, or something like that, along the lines of, like, it helps add to it, but it's not the primary thing that helps the most. And regarding, like, what you were talking about, like, oh, are you able to kind of make the script your own, or do you have to follow it? That I found that kind of depends on who you're working with. Uh, some people are like, "Oh man, I love that!" Like, just do it. Like, like, if you make a change, they're like, "Oh yeah, that's great. We're gonna change the script and just it fits. We're gonna keep it." Other people are like, "Hey man, that was great. Let's do it again, but the script this time." Like, so, it completely depends, and there's no right or wrong answer to it. It's just, like, a lot of times in the booth, it's a very collaborative process. And so, like, you know there's no punishment for doing something. Like, if you read it and then you switch some words around because that's how you normally would read it in your head, no one's going to be like, well, you're fired, goodbye. They're just going to be like, if they liked it, they're going to keep it. If they don't, they're like, hey, let's just do it again. There's the stakes are very low.
It's good to be able to like adapt like that, though. I find that very, it helps Like just saying, like, you know, like you said, just being from a writer to an actor and vice versa, just kind of like being able to just use those skills to make your job a lot easier. But you know, like along the lines of acting, though, man, like I know we've been talking about script writing for a while, but I want to get into just, you know, you said you wanted to do acting first or initially. Um, did you want to do like voice acting? Is that something that you were going for? Because I know that with voice acting a lot, that's kind of like the thing now with a lot of these younger viewers that want to do acting. It's not so much like I want to be a stage actor or a movie actor. It's like I want to do anime acting, you know. So was that something that you wanted to do first, or was it more so like, you know, live acting?
I mean, I liked doing performance. Like I was like from kind of when I was starting to try to explore what I wanted to do. Some of the first things that were in my mind of like, I want to do improv, I want to do stand up comedy and things like that. And like, you know, theater was on the table, but for me, like I've always loved video games. And like, you know, my parents were kind of restrictive, but that only made me love them more, you know.
I can
So
relate to that for sure.
yeah. Yeah. So I mean that was the kind of one of those things of just like, you know, I would really love to work in video games and like it, but also do performance and like what does that mean, video game voiceover, you know, like kind of that's kind of where I landed on it. And like there's another aspect of it too from like realistically I was like I'm like when I do theater, most of these roles are for, you know, tall white guys. And I'm a short Asian guy. So I was like, I don't see myself in a lot of these roles. But with especially improv and voiceover, I was like, it doesn't really matter, you know, my ethnicity, what I look like, or anything like that. I can just work. I can just do stuff. And so that's kind of where I like what really pushed me more towards voiceover was that like I didn't have to worry about like casting or type or anything like that. So
Yeah, I think that's kind of like how I always felt about voice acting too. Is more so like it's just the skill of the person, right? It's not, you know, you don't have to meet certain expectations of your aesthetic or how you look.
mhm.
And you know that, and you brought up video games, and like video games is why I kind of was more drawn to what the voice acting stuff, like, you know, with anime and cartoons. But like one of my favorite games is Final Fantasy X, and that was like one of the first video games ever to have voice acting in it.
Mhm.
So when you're watching stuff like that and then hearing it, and then, you know, you kind of, and then when they show like how the actors look like compared to the character, it's kind of mind blowing too, because like, man, that means you don't have to like look like a character, like a certain
Exactly.
character, or you don't have to be a certain character. It's just really the skill of your voice, the technique of your acting being pushed through the mic. And you know, like I mentioned before, like I have had other voice actors on talking about like their experiences of just being able to work more freely. Like Mark Witten, who does the voice of Kyojiro from Demon Slayer, was talking to me about like, you know, he's able to move more in the booth and like do more of I not so much passionate, but like just more energy when it comes to his voice acting. Like he's able to push out things that he's able to express versus like live acting where when the camera's on, you can't really do that. You know, you can't be like too chaotic in certain
Yeah.
scenes when you're
Like
live acting.
it's working on it's like, you know, it's a different muscle
Yeah.
to do it on film versus in the booth.
You know, so you know, when you first were doing I guess just voiceover, did you start off with video games then, or you know, did you do commercial, or what did you do first?
I kind of did like kind of a multi thing where because I did move to Dallas, I knew that like anime was pretty big here. I also was like, you know, I want to get into commercial work while also working on like, you know, a lot like character stuff, like taking classes for character voiceover as well because, you know, kind of you know, this is something that I've said like if for some reason I could only do one kind of voiceover for the rest of my life, it'd be video game. That like there's not really a question to me. Um but like, you know, there's an aspect here too of like video games a little harder like to get into without an agent. Um there's there's a couple like studios you can reach out to and try to get onto their list for video game, but a lot of the bigger stuff, a lot of the video game stuff is just going to go through, that's not independent, is going to go through agents. And so like, to me, getting an agent, one of the things that they're going to look for is commercial. So like it's a multi-level of like, well, to do this I got to do that, and to do that I got to do this, and to do this I got, like, and so I was kind of approaching it from a bunch of different ways. And I mean, here's the other thing too about it, is that like back in the day, like getting paid $50 an hour for anime was good. An 1 hour session for a commercial could pay you $500. So like, like the amount of pay differential was really huge. And so there's a lot of like incentive to also work on kind of my commercial read and getting doing that better. And so yeah, I just kind of did a whole smorgasbord of VO genres basically. So
Yeah, that's a good point you bring up too about like, I guess, incentive when it comes to just doing certain jobs. Because again, a lot of people who are trying to come into this business when it comes to just voice acting in general don't really see that. They think they could just, I'm not assuming everyone, but the idea is that you could just go in and hopefully if you have a certain skill set or something that stands out, you can land like a big role in a mainstream anime or something. Like they don't really see like mostly everything else that we do in our lives. There's no promoting of like the work coming up. Like no one wants to like say like, oh no, you got to take classes, you got to take job acting gigs that you don't want to do, you got to do voiceover for commercials and stuff like that. Like, the stuff that pays your bills, that's not really as promoted as like, oh, I could be like, Deku from My Hero, or something like that.
yeah.
So I find that point really good that you brought up, because it's definitely an eye-opening thing where,
oh dude, like I moved to Dallas in 2014. And so like this was right when they started doing simuldubs. And so like let me give you an idea of like, I moved to Dallas in 2014. I had my first session at Funimation in 2015. I had my second session at 2016. And then I had my third in 2017. Like if and again, this is also like back then, $50 an hour was real good. So I get $50 each time over the course of 3 years. And like, I don't know. I see some people who moved in like 2018, 19, who were relatively newer. And they're like, oh, I'm going in like once a month, and like, I want, like, that's not good enough. And I'm like, dude, it took me 4 years to get to the point where I was coming in once a month. Like it's, you're doing fine. Like sometimes things take time. And also like, you also got to think too, is that, sometimes when I say Funimation, I mean CrunchyRoll. Sometimes like nowadays they've combined, but back then, like the Funimation roster used to have like 800 people on it, man. Like and you getting called once a month, that's pretty good for being one of 800 people on that list.
right.
Like that's actually very good. And so sometimes like it's like it can be tough trying to talk to some people about it, because there are people sometimes like I'll sometimes like go on to like the voice acting club Discord or like the voice acting Reddit subreddit and just talk to people and just be like, answer questions whenever I can. And some people, like, I want to do this. And it's like, hey, go for it. Like follow your dreams for sure. But also understand that like anime is not going to pay your bills. Probably not, like not for a long time. And like, if you like, you just have to accept that. And there are people who will point to like, well, what about this person? Like, I remember talking with people, and Micah Salasad would come up a lot as someone who sent his demo in 2012 and then got cast and then moved and started hitting the ground running. And it's like, that's not really the way things work anymore. And like a lot of the people that are quote unquote overnight successes have been at it for a long time. You just, it's just harder to see that.
Right. No one sees like the amount of work that's been put in to be at for the level that they're at right now.
Yeah. What's that quote? Like, it took me 10 years to become an overnight success or something like that. Like it can take a long time.
it seems like it seems a lot easier nowadays because with social media and everything, and like within like over the whole overnight success thing, it can happen. But then the chances of that is so slim now because everyone is on the internet, whether it's like social media or trying to be like content creators or even like doing just free content, right? Like anyone can just do, I guess you could say, voice acting, but not so much secure a job in voice acting.
Mhm.
So there's I spoke with Molly Zhang like on our episode we did together. She even mentioned like she did like the fan dubs. Like some people start off like that and kind of work their way up. So there's so many ways to get into this industry, but I'm glad that you brought that topic up. Just seeing like it's not as easy as it looks, but you can still do it. But the work has to be put in there.
Yeah, and also setting expectations is
Right.
is good to not set expectations too high.
Right. Yeah, I think the people kind of lose the realistic ideas because they get so caught up in the hype. Like, man, I think they see people like you said, they see people who can make it in this industry, and then it's nice to think that you can go into this industry and be or make something of yourself. But again, the whole realistic idea of just like it's more so, are you going to be able to stick with it? I think a lot of people want to be like I said, they just want to do the mainstream stuff, and then hopefully by some like miraculous by the internet gods or something, like they just blow up overnight. But I like talking about this because it kind of, I want viewers and followers to kind of like just know how much effort is put into this industry to make like something as simply as our shows that we enjoy so much.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, like it's also just one of those things where like it's I cannot overstate I can't say enough how much rejection is involved in this job. Like the amount of times you audition and like don't hear back, you never hear back, is astounding. Like there's sometimes I'll see this discourse come up every once in a while on like Twitter or social media of people being like, I think people should send rejection emails. Like whenever you audition for something and don't get it, you should be sent an email. Like, and I look at that and go like, whoever said this isn't auditioning enough, because it's like, if like when I used to have way more time, I would audition for literally like 20, 30 projects a night, like a day. Like I usually audition at night, so I say it at night, but like a day I would audition for, anywhere between 20 to 30. And like, if I got a rejection email for every single one of those, like, no, I'd die. So like, it's just the amount of like work you have to put in, the amount of rejection you have to face. And like, there's an aspect too of just like, there's some people who just can't handle that amount of rejection. And if you want to be an actor for any sustainable amount of time, you have to be okay you have to find a way to not take it personally and to be able to push through with that.
If you want to start your own podcast like Spoiler Force, then sign up with Buzzsprout. Buzzsprout has helped hundreds of thousands of users like me to begin their podcasting journey. With easy-to-use tools, you can effectively get your podcast into different platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, iHeartRadio, and more. You can view your stats, create audio clips, and even have your own podcasting website. Buzzsprout offers ideas, tips, tricks, and tutorials to help you improve your podcast. Follow the link below, and once you sign up, you'll get a $20 Amazon gift card. This will let Buzzsprout know that I sent you and will also support Spoiler Force Podcast. If you want a simpler way to record both video and audio for your podcast, then sign up with StreamYard. StreamYard is the perfect program to create podcasts, host live streams, and even do video calls. There are many tools that can help you create and design your own personal studio. You can screen share, read live comments, and stream to different destinations like Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. You can also download your video and audio once you're done with your recording session. Follow the link below, and once you sign up with the basic or pro plan, you'll earn a $10 credit to use for StreamYard. Happy podcasting. I could definitely, say from my experience as well, like my fair share of rejections on like just even on this podcast stuff. Like I'm not even an actor, and like when I do reach out to like agents or voice actors and stuff like that, I I do understand like that feeling, where yes, it would be nice to have a rejection email or like someone say like, oh, I'm sorry I can't do this, but that's not how this world works, man. Like these people that are trying to make all this entertainment stuff happen, it's like it's on the go. They don't have time to tell everyone like, hey, you didn't make it, you didn't make the cut. So as someone who's trying to be an actor or or a content creator as well, being able to have like tough and thick skin and just being able to like roll that stuff off your shoulders and just move on to the next thing plays a huge part in just even on your mental health, just so that you're not so like down and out. Because like you said, I can only imagine getting that like years worth of rejections sent by email or by letters, and it'll be very discouraging at times if you get that much amount.
Oh, for sure. I mean, like acting in general is can be very discouraging. It can be, man, dry periods feel real bad. but like, it's part of it is just sticking in there, and also just understanding that like that it's not on you. Like there are situations where it could be like, hey, you could be more competitive. Like you should, perhaps do more training to become more competitive, or like, oh, maybe learn an accent to do this. But like it has no bearing on your worth as a person. Whether you're booking or not, you are still a human being, and you still have value. Not in your, like, your value doesn't lie in your skill set. It lies in the fact that you're human. And sometimes it's easy to forget that when you're not booking, but like, but it's something to like, that's one of those things that, you keep in mind to kind of push through, of like, even if you aren't booking, you are still enough. You're still worthy, But yeah, I mean, like, there's plenty of people that like just along the way have stopped doing acting and stopped doing voiceover, and it's one of those things that's kind of, it's sad, but also on the other hand, it's like, if you're not happy doing it, you don't do it, because you're just spinning your wheels for and torturing yourself for something that you don't really even want. So I it's just it's a long road, basically.
But Alex, going through all that, man, like even like the downs of being an actor or like trying to find like work in this industry, have you had moments where like you wanted to just quit, but found ways to just not?
So for me, even in situations where I'm really having a rough time and a real dry spell and not booking much, I've never really considered quitting seriously, because there's really nothing else that I've found in my life that I want to do more. So it's pretty much all I have in terms of just like, because like it's just like, what else would I do? I don't know.
Right.
Nothing else seems more interesting than this. So I haven't really gotten to that point, but I have, I've talked to people who have, and I know people who have, and it's like, I think it's just kind of a difference of priorities and also just feel, because like there are times where like I have been like, man, I kind of wish I could find happiness in having a more traditional job, more traditional kind of thing. I wish I could do that, but in the times that I've tried, in the times that I've put myself in that situation, I hated it. I wanted nothing more than to quit immediately. So
Yeah, that I can really relate to, like just doing my my everyday 9 to 5 job, and just kind of putting enough effort in there just to kind of stick it out, and then coming home to doing what I like, which is all this podcasting stuff. I can really relate to that, just being able to, because I guess just, when you find something that one like really enjoys, like doesn't matter how much sleep you get, it doesn't matter how much time you put in, like as long as you're doing something that that you enjoy. I think that's what a lot of people kind of misconstrue when they're trying to like, find something that'll make them successful. Like I think that's what a lot of like I brought it before, like especially in this industry for voice acting or for writing, they only see the goods of it, and it's never really, or at least from what I've never seen, it's just more like I would love to see more of the struggle of this, because this is what helps you build your character when you're trying to go into this kind of field. And so
Yeah.
like that's why I relate to so much as a content creator, because man, I've had moments where like I wanted to quit so badly, and
Mhm.
then even on the verge of quitting everything completely, but then just, I guess it sounds like very cheesy, but like the love of your craft is what keeps you going. Like it doesn't matter if everyone tells you no. If you keep telling yourself that I'm going to keep doing this, you'll eventually, be able to push through all of that.
Mhm. I mean, yeah, it's one of those things where, like, there's definitely an aspect of the voiceover world that I I feel like I feel some kind of way about it in terms of just like there's a lot of like I would say toxic positivity in the voiceover world, and like sometimes like it's one of those things where like I don't support posting. I don't think it's necessarily a great idea to post it online in social media, but to find people who like who are will hear you vent and can who might be in the same situation as you, because to acknowledge that like sometimes this shit kind of sucks. Like
Yeah.
stuff like not booking feels really bad sometimes. It feels awful, and sometimes it can just really grind on and make you tired, and like being able to vent that is nice. I think that like you know the downside to doing it on social media is that like sometimes casting directors are like, "Oh, you aren't working, huh?"
Yeah.
Maybe you're not that great, but like, you know, you have to separate. You have to be able to separate like the brand versus the person, because like, I'm never gonna I try not to post anything negative, but which is that doesn't mean I don't feel negative things sometimes. So
It's smarter to not post negative stuff on social media, because there is like a drawback, right? Like,
yeah,
especially like on sites like on Twitter, like I'm barely really on it. I just post and go. But
yeah,
I've seen, a lot of people go on Twitter and there's always something that's trending or something that causes people to be upset, like whether it's whatever topic it is. But what I'm trying to get to is like, when you do post something that is, I guess, negative, it's good to see that there's people who have your support, but then in a professional way, it's kind of showcasing like, oh man, this person, if they don't land like the job or the role, this is
hmm
what they go to like vent. Like you're kind
yeah,
of striking yourself out when it comes to like trying to get bookings, because then they'll know like, oh man, this person kind of just vents on the internet and they see
yeah.
what you're saying all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know those people, and those people like, it's one of those things where sometimes that really bites them. That really bites them back. I I think there's an aspect of like I don't think you need to post about this kind of reality of the voiceover and acting world on social media, but like I think there's some times where people pretend that it doesn't exist. That
Yeah.
like oh, if you aren't 100% happy 100% of the time, you're just jealous. And it's just like, no man, sometimes it's hard. Sometimes I really want to be happy for you, and I am, but also I'm thinking about the bills that I got and being like, oh, I got to pay these bills. I got rent, like sometimes it's like that. And like I think that it's there's no easy answer. It's kind of a just a balance to strike of being real, but also not being negative, but you know, being acknowledging that like sometimes this is hard, man. Sometimes
Yeah.
it can be rough.
I think that's what kind of like just blinds folks sometimes. It's like they only want it, like we said, I've repeated it so many times, like it's only the good things. The
Yeah,
moment that something bad happens, it's like, oh, we don't want that, get rid of it. Like we don't want to tarnish or like make something that we all like look bad. But it's
yeah.
kind of just the reality of things. But Alex, like you brought up rejection on the show here, and I do want to get into this too. Like I've seen on your website you do comedy as well, like stand up comedy,
hmm
and I'm sure you have like being able to feel that stage, or the audience reject you on stage. like to kind of help
Yeah.
you build up that kind of tolerance.
Well, actually, it like funnily enough, it didn't because
Oh.
so like I I was like super into stand up. Like I want to say, geez, back in 2014, 15, like when I just moved, I was like super into it, and I was going to open mics and doing all that stuff. And like the thing about like me putting that much effort into stand up really cemented how much I love improv because with stand up, you're up there on stage alone, and when you're doing good, it feels incredible. Like it feels really good. But when you bomb, it's awful. It's like the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, and like it is just awful. And also the whole process of like you write a whole bunch, you just write tons of jokes, and then you go and perform them at open mics and things like that, and you condense, you cut jokes, you make them, you distill them into what's the funniest part about that, and you just keep working it until you have like you know what is the funniest version of this that you can do, and then you just keep doing that nonstop, and that whole process is just lots of open mics, tons of writing, tons of just trying material and throwing it away. And it's one of those things where it's so much work, and I have so much respect for people who can do it because I can't. um, and me coming to that realization pushed me more towards improv, because improv, I don't need to, it's almost like the opposite, in that stand up is so solitary and so like you are working on the process, while improv is you are working with other people on that process. And where stand up, you hide the process and the preparation. Improv, that's what it's about. and and like yeah, I think killing it at stand up is probably a higher feeling, like in terms of just like being on stage and like just feeling that high. But bombing in improv is way more like I could bomb in improv, I could die on stage constantly because I'm dying on stage with someone else who I trust, and we're going to die together, and that's great. And like so I definitely, like, it pushed me more towards improv,
Now,
which is,
do you still do stand up then, or like I
I don't
guess?
really do stand up. I like writing it, and I'll spend time just writing it, and then just like cutting it down, with like cutting out the actual performance aspect of it, and just trying to make it the funniest possible.
Okay.
But I don't perform it that much anymore. I Improv is really where a lot of my time and energy has been going.
Is that like is that kind of like more like stand up comedy too? Then like where you have like just the open mics with improv?
So there are like jams, like improv jams, but
Okay.
usually with improv, like there's a lot of like, for example, I used to do a lot of work with comedy sports, and like I would do improv with the same troupe like constantly, and so you develop a lot of trust, and you develop a lot of like chemistry working with other people. And it's where it's still comedy, it's still that, but like you'll like people will go out and will like get suggestions, and we'll do scenes that are just made up on the spot, like never done before, never to be done again, and just finding what's funny in that kind of in the moment situation. So
Have you ever done like what kind of improv is it, like where the audience will like yell out a topic or scenario for you and just act on that? Have you ever done
yeah,
something like that?
yeah.
Okay.
Like usually that, like things like whose line is it anyway? That's like
Oh,
short
okay.
form style. I've done short form and long form, and yeah, I mean, like when I was like, you know, the pandemic has obviously just messed a whole bunch of stuff when it comes to live theater stuff. But like, man, like before the pandemic, I was doing like 5 shows a week at the theater that we had, and just like constantly just doing improv. So yeah, it was yeah, I also just highly recommend just doing improv for anyone who wants to be an actor, do voiceover work. Improv helps so much.
I don't know if you watched The Office or not, but have you ever had anyone that was like a Michael Scott in your class or group?
Yeah, I mean, I've had people who don't like to listen or don't like to play well, but part of what makes improv so fun can be working with that person and making, because so the like I strongly believe this, that the the point of improv is to make your partner, whoever you're playing with, the other people you're playing with, look the best possible. You want to make them look good. So I even when someone is doing kind of like, like the Office Michael Scott thing of like, I don't really care what you're saying. I'm not listening to what you're saying. Finding ways to make them seem funny and make them seem like the best person on stage is fun in its own way, and is kind of the goal. So
I can't stop thinking about like that scene where he just like boom, Michael Scott, like he has all the guns and then he has to like pretend to put everything away, and then at the end with the scene of him and Ken Jeong, he's like, "Oh yeah, he has a gun on me," So like just
yeah.
someone who's consistently the same character in each like improv take that you guys do. It's hilarious in the show, but I can see how frustrating that could be as like working with a whole team.
It can be frustrating, but I think it's definitely a part of like the mindset of like looking at it as like, hey, like we're gonna go with it. It's the shift of like, oh, we have to do this again versus we get to do this again. We get to try to see what we can do with this.
Was there, I guess, the group that you were with, was it just one consistent group, or were you able to go to like different improv clubs and like work with different people too?
So I mean, like I've like I was part of the Comedy Sports Dallas troupe, and so that was like a set troupe. But also I've done shows and with like just different people at different theaters all over Dallas Fort Worth. I've worked with like Alternative Comedy Club, Dallas Comedy House, things like that, and just giving working with different troops, whether it be on like just a real temporary like one night kind of basis, or just joining those different troops and things like that. So yeah, it's a whole other kind of thing.
But yeah, man, I think that's a great way to kind of just like to just keep the craft or your creative side going. Like when you're not booking roles for like voice acting, or when you don't have like script writing to do, like to keep that creative flow going with improv, and keeps you on your toes. Which you're the first that I've had on my show to that kind of like did that. Everyone else is always doing like stage plays or music or something like that. Like or like the YouTube stuff, like vlogging and stuff. Like you're the first to even like to talk about going into stand up comedy or improv.
Oh,
So like
that's cool.
it's really cool to kind of see that perspective when you're an actor, because usually it's always like it always seems like they don't really mix well when it comes to comedy and acting. Because like if you see like a lot of comics who became actors, they're kind of just themselves in their movies,
Hmm.
or like if you see an actor trying to do stand up, it's kind of rough because like everyone's so used to them seeing everyone's used to seeing them like in a movie or like with something that's scripted versus something that you have to write down and kind of like add your own experiences into comedy or even improv. So like it's two different things, but like hearing that like how your improv experience has helped you and with voice acting as well. Like it's a new thing for me to hear and to learn that. So I really appreciate that you brought that up on the show.
No problem. It's actually really funny though. So like I know there are some of us that are out there in terms of that like do voiceover, but also like are really really into improv. Um, but I can almost guarantee you that anyone like like I want to say like I bet 90 to 95% of the people that you've talked to in the past have taken improv classes as actors, because that's such a it's improv is such a strong skill set that like most like I would go to as far as to say like 99 to 100% of actors uh have taken improv classes in order to improve that aspect of their acting. It's acting like improv classes is like pretty ubiquitous with acting classes, and like I'm certain that like most of them don't aren't as obsessed about it as I am. But but like it is more common than you would think. Like,
Definitely,
far more
it's definitely something to like to have something grounded with improv. You know, like you brought up, like it's a great way to kind of just adapt when it comes to your acting skills. That way, you're not just like one dimensional.
Mhm.
You have like a variety of different skill sets to play with when you're an actor. Because I think that's what makes acting very unique. Is like you're able to access different types of moments or emotions when it comes to being an actor. You're not just one stagnant character. You're able
Mhm.
to like, you know, one you could be menacing at one point, or you can be emotional at another point, you know, or like heroic in a way. So I think you know, with improv, it's a great foundation to kind of start with. But like I said, you're the first to kind of like express improv in this manner to where like I'm like, holy crap, it's something that's not so much simple, but like something that's very base for a lot of actors to kind of just go into, and that kind of like opens doorways. Like you're the first to kind of like really share your experience and express like how that's boosted your career.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. But you know, as we come to an end here, Alex, man, like I really appreciate your time just being able to speak openly about your thoughts, not on your experience as well, but like just in acting. And it's definitely very insightful. I found this conversation super insightful to be able to kind of like mesh your experiences from acting to writing to stand up or to improv. You know, it's I think it's great to be able to have conversations like this with actors who and not just strictly be fans of their work, but be able to hear their learning experiences and to be able to share that.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
But you know, before we do end things here, man, was there anything that you know like to say, you know, before we end the show here?
Um, no, I mean, like, I think that what you're doing is great, and this is a cool podcast, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, dude. Like, if you ever want to come back on and just like talk more about your comedy side or the improv stuff, I'd love to have you back on, dude. It's
Sure.
it's really cool to kind of just be able to touch upon these different topics. 'Cause I know that with, you know, again, speaking with voice actors, it's always like they kind of want us to, or viewers would like to hear, you know, what's your favorite anime, you know, the very Comic-Con-esque questions. But that's what I'm trying to avoid now, because a lot of a lot of these things that are asked, like I heard from like Robbie Damon. He did immediately, like one of his panels, he was like, I'm gonna just blow through the very uh like frequently asked questions. And so once he did that, like a lot of the people who were in line kind of just sat down because like their questions were answered, you know. So
Yeah.
that's a learning thing for me. Like, to when I do have actors on the show, like it's yes, it's fun to geek out about what they've done and what they worked in and stuff like that. But it's also like I gotta learn to kind of avoid that, because that's probably being asked daily when it comes, whether you're at cons, in person, emails, you know. So I think what you've done on this episode, man, like I really appreciate just the whole like aspect and perspective of just being able to come up and be an actor. And you know, especially being Asian, man, like I really feel you on like the whole doctor and, you know, lawyer thing and having tiger parents. So being able to go into the entertainment industry, man, I applaud you for that, man.
Oh, dude, it was rough. Like, and I told my folks, they were like, they're like, hey, I I'd be lying if I said I wasn't disappointed, and I was like, sorry. And like, it's one of those things. But like, I mean, the thing, I'm very lucky to have parents that are supportive. Like they like I know people whose parents are not, and they've had to make really tough choices in terms of like that kind of stuff. And I've been very, very lucky about it. Uh, I think there's an aspect too of like I obviously easier said than done, but this is for like anyone who's like who has parents who has very Asian parents like this and that are strongly against this kind of move. But it's like they do it because they care. The pushback is because they're afraid you're gonna end up homeless, or like, or they're afraid you're not gonna have a good life. And I think some of the aspects that really helped was like, because my parents are first generation, so I was like, part of the conversation was like, you came to America so that I could have a better life. And that like you've had to do jobs that you don't like doing to give me the opportunity to do the things I want to do. Like this is what I want to do. And like obviously there's still some pushback, but it really helps when you start making money and you're like, hey, listen, I'm okay.
Oh man, like
please stop bothering me about it. Please, I'm okay.
now that you bring that up, dude, like I have a cousin who gets paid to play video games.
Oh,
and
nice.
His parents were so against it initially, and so he started bringing in money, and then they were like, "So are you gonna keep playing games to make money?" Then, like once they saw the money come in, they're like their minds shifted. I was like, "Man, what the hell is this?"
I mean, truly, it comes from a place of love of like, oh, you're fine, like you're okay. You don't like if like 20 years from now, however long, you'll be okay because this thing pays you. That's good. Like that's really what they care about.
Right.
And like they don't Asian parents not very good at saying those kinds of things in a way that's nice and acceptable. They, they sometimes rather just berate you about it. But like it's at least I believe that a lot of it comes from a place of concern and love. And it doesn't make it less frustrating, but it's like, hey, this is how I approach it, of being like, listen, I get it, and here's my plan, and even if you have to just maybe be like, hey, listen, if it doesn't work and by this time I'll go back to school and go do my doctorate, even if you have no intention of ever doing that, just saying it helps.
For sure, man. I think it's great to be able to like just to share these common experiences, man. It's so like relieving for myself as well, because sometimes like I do feel like left out at times where I'm like, damn, dude, like I'm like one of the very few, at least in my friend groups, that's like trying to pursue something that I want, versus them where they're like they hit the checklist. They went to school, went to college, got a degree, now they're married and have kids. Like for me, I'm just like, that's a little bit too safe. And I want to pursue what I want, and then like being able to talk with people like you and like Anyatko and Molly, and be able to share like the same Asian experience. Like, okay, so I'm not the only one who's struggling.
Oh yeah. That pressure definitely exists, and like it's one of those things where people kind of take it for granted sometimes, of just being like, having a family that supports you is really, really, really nice. It's very good. And unfortunately, not everyone has that privilege, So,
but man, I've enjoyed this conversation, Alex. Man, if you
me
ever
too.
want to come back on, dude, I'll love to have you back on again.
Absolutely, man.
For folks who do want to follow you though, like how can they do that as well?
You can follow me on Twitter at my man Alex. The Mai is MAI, and you can also like my website at alexmyvoice.com, or my email at alex@alexmyvoice.com.
Perfect. I'll have all that in the show notes and the links as well, so they can for anyone who's watching or listening, they can help follow you and help help share your content as well. But as I end this episode with you, man, like I said, I really just appreciate being able to have this real conversation with you, and not just being able to be like, how is it like working on One Piece? Like not the typical stuff. So it's really cool to kind of just like open the conversation here and just have people learn, especially your experience, man. And that's for me, that's what matters the most.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, I like this format a lot better than kind of the standard question and answer thing. So
yeah,
great.
But yeah, thank you so much, man. Again, for folks who are watching or listening, please like, share, and subscribe to Spoiler Force. Make sure you follow Alex again in the links. You'll see the links to his website and to Twitter and all that stuff where you can support him as well. Thank you guys so much. This is episode 142. I hope you guys have a great day. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to give a review and rate Spoiler Force Podcast. If you want to get all Spoiler Force updates or even peeks at behind the scenes, you can join the Spoiler Force Discord community. And if you'd like to show support, give tips, recommendations, sponsorships, or any collaborations,
you can email me at rickyvang92@gmail.com.